What's up, comrades? Welcome to the left side of liberty. It has been a very long time since I've last been with y'all. Um, it has been almost, I'd say, 3 months, I think, since my last video. But anyway, the reason why I haven't been with you guys in a while is because I've been having some uh, mental health setbacks, let's say. Um, Mostly due to the whole COVID thing. Um, Long story short, just the past year or so, with all the changes that have gone on and all the bullshit, um, it's been really hard to deal with, and you know, I've just been going through a lot of depression and a lot of anxiety, which I've had to deal with since the age of 6, and was compounded uh, uh, when I was 12, when I had a stroke, a very serious stroke, and it was just awful. And so I've had to deal with anxiety and depression for years, and it got really bad again this year, just with all the changes that have come about as a result of COVID, and it's been really difficult to deal with and to come to terms with, especially when you're somebody like me who's a person that doesn't like change and tries to avoid it at all costs. And when you have it thrust upon you and you can't do anything about it, it's really difficult to deal with. So, the last few months have been especially difficult for various reasons. But I'm here now, so I guess that's what matters. So I'm going to talk about a few different topics today. I first of all want to talk about a few different points made by the first person that I ever heard of that was a political commentator. When I was very young, the first person that I ever was aware of who did political commentary was Bill O'Reilly, embarrassingly enough. And actually, before I get to Bill O'Reilly, I just want to do a quick recap of the events of the last few months since I've been away from you guys. We had the election drama, which I went into a little bit in my last video, but we had the election drama, the post-election drama, the election conspiracy theories and all that. The attempted quasi coup that was egged on by President Trump, and then he walked it back a million times, but then he kind of egged it on again, and then he would walk it back, then he would egg it on again, then he would walk it back. And then now we have the impeachment business, and it's just been one giant circus. And then we have Biden's executive orders, which conservatives are all bent out of shape about. And really, they're just nothing but symbolic bullshit. They don't really mean anything. So that's why he's not really getting a lot of praise from me. The Keystone XL pipeline thing, I kind of agree with Kyle Kulinski's take on this, where he said that what Biden should have done in that instance was you make sure that for every job you kill on the Keystone XL pipeline, you make sure that you create a secure union job in place of that job that you kill. And Biden didn't do that, and it's coming back to haunt him. And so I agree with Kyle's take on that. Just as a real quick thing. So yeah, Biden's not really getting a lot of praise in my eyes, and in the eyes of a lot of other people, even uh, people that presumably are supposed to be his supporters, which I'm not one of them. I'm just saying that even people that are to the right of me, uh, even they're like, yeah, he's not really doing anything that we that we support. I mean, he's keeping us in all these stupid wars and all that that nobody's happy about really, except corporations and all that, but and the military industrial complex and all that stuff. But anyway, so back to Bill O'Reilly. So I used to watch Bill O'Reilly occasionally when I was a kid, and he's just one of those guys that no matter what your political persuasion is, he's just a guy that he has that just something about him, that presence and that charisma, I guess, that he just has such a powerful presence and a commanding presence that when he talks, you feel like you got to listen to him. Again, no matter if you agree with him, if you disagree with him politically, whatever, he just has that, just something about him that compels you to want to listen to him. And now, of course, when I started to watch him, about 15 years ago or so, I didn't know about, the domestic violence allegations, the sexual assault allegations, all that stuff that would come to light later. But anyway, I thought that when he left Fox News, he would maybe be a little bit more reasonable, but I checked his YouTube channel recently, and basically he's the same Bill O'Reilly that he was on Fox News. And, basically, like, for instance, he calls anybody that disagrees with him even a little bit, he basically calls them far left or radical or whatever. Like, he called Bruce Springsteen far left. I mean, Bruce Springsteen, yeah, Bruce Springsteen has, a lot of his songs are about working class life and whatever, but on the other hand, the guy has endorsed people for president like Barack Obama and Joe Biden, the most bland neoliberals imaginable. So that's not far left. And, now granted, Barack Obama, when he ran in 2008, did run more of like a Bernie Sanders style campaign. But even the idea of Bernie Sanders being far left is just ridiculous. I mean, it is nonsense to suggest that Bernie Sanders is some far left, kooky, radical, extremist, whatever nonsense terminology that conservatives, want to make up for themselves. It's ridiculous. I mean, that's just nonsense. So, and of course, in a couple of other videos that I watched from Bill O'Reilly's channel, he can't help but mention George Soros. He's got to throw in George Soros references once in a while, or else it wouldn't be, a Bill O'Reilly channel or show without throwing in, sorry, little technical glitch there, without throwing in George Soros references. Sorry, my camera's acting up a little bit today. I don't know what the hell is wrong with it. But so if there's little technical glitches here and there, I apologize. But I wanted to make a video today, so this is what you're gonna get. Let me just take a sip of water first. So, like for instance, with the Soros thing, Bill O'Reilly calls George Soros a socialist. Yes, yes, George Soros, a hedge fund billionaire, wants socialism. Totally, Bill. That's what great, excellent political analysis you have. Wonderful. Yes, a hedge fund billionaire wants socialism. What a brilliant mind you have, Bill O'Reilly. It's stuff like that just he's just so silly. And you can see the influence that Bill O'Reilly has had on generations that have come after him. Like, basically people like Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, and even like the females, like, Tommy Lahren, Lauren Chen, Lauren Southern, and even, Lauren Chen and Lauren Southern are more extreme than Bill O'Reilly. You can still see ripples, of Bill O'Reilly in what they do because, Bill O'Reilly is one of the OGs, if you will, of that, of like right wing commentary where you strawman your political opponents. You just make up what they believe, and you get everything wrong, but you say it with such confidence that you make people that already agree with you believe what you say without question. So they think, oh, this guy must know what he's talking about because he's saying it very confidently. So yeah, he must know what he's talking about and he must be right, So you trick people that don't know any better into thinking that you're a reliable source of information when really you don't know what the hell you're talking about, and you pick on vulnerable people that don't know any better, and you end up just poisoning political discourse. So Bill O'Reilly is one of the originators of that particular phenomenon. So O'Reilly himself is actually, he's actually pretty smart. He'll use not very intelligent arguments, but O'Reilly himself is actually pretty clever. I'll give him that. One thing that he said that really infuriated me a couple weeks ago, I think it was, he was talking about housing and how I think there was a bill proposed or something like that. I don't know what it was. Talking about how, or I forget the exact context, but he was talking about the phrase or the concept of housing is a right. And O'Reilly, for whatever reason, got bent out of shape over that. And he goes, well, no, access to housing is a right. And I actually commented this in the comment section. I was like, that's very Christian of you, Bill O'Reilly, because he likes to present himself as a very staunch Catholic and a very good, faithful Catholic guy. It's like, yes, Bill O'Reilly, you're such a faithful Catholic, beating women and sexually harassing women and advocating poor people to not have roofs over their heads, very Catholic of you. I'm sure Jesus would just love you, Bill O'Reilly, very, very good, But this idea that housing shouldn't be a right, because his rationale was, well, we live in a capitalist system, and you got to work for it. And he used his own life. See, this is what conservatives do all the time. He uses his own life to rationalize why other people shouldn't have things like housing. He said, well, I had to, when I was living in Scranton, I had to work 2 jobs just to pay the rent. It's like, well, Bill, I don't care what you had to do. I think everybody should have a right to a roof over their heads. I think that is a very, very reasonable thing to request, that everybody be sheltered. That everybody should expect a roof over their heads, without fear of it being taken away. And Bill O'Reilly, his argument was, well, if we do that, that's communism, and that can be taken away by the government. It's like, okay, no. If we do a universal housing program, that's not communism. That's just a universal program that now it is true in some countries that are supposedly quote unquote communist, which really is only communist in name only, that there is like free housing, meaning free at the point of service. But in the United States, housing would not be taken away from people. That's not what anybody wants. That's not what Bernie Sanders would want. That's not what AOC would want. That's not what Ilhan Omar would want. Like nobody that's like economically progressive. That's not what they would want. They don't want to take away anybody's housing. That's ridiculous, Bill. So that was his argument, against it. And by the way, Bill O'Reilly is one of these people, like most conservative commentators, they're fundamentally incapable of understanding the differences between progressives, socialists, communists, progressive socialists, communists, social democrats, leftists. They don't know any distinction between these terms. Now, there are some overlap between all of these terms, but they don't know the differences and the nuances and the complexities between these terms. They just lump them all together, and it's like, oh my God. So that's just a little update on Bill O'Reilly. Again, just how great of a Christian he is, that he thinks that we shouldn't give housing to people, basically because it's a nefarious plot that will lead to some authoritarian, nefarious communist government. And of course, as I've discussed on this channel before, the governments that are supposedly communist, they don't care about communism. They do not care at all about communism. Like, for instance, the Communist Party of China, same thing as the Communist Party of Cuba, they don't give a shit about communism. They care about authoritarianism. They don't give a shit about communism. Like, they don't care about workers. They don't care about human rights. They don't care about sheltering their people. They don't care about giving their workers control over the means of production. They don't care about the most basic tenets of communism. So the idea that they're actually achieving some sort of communist vision is just ridiculous. Now, there are some aspects of like Marxism, for instance. There are definitely aspects of Marx's philosophy that I disagree with, but to pretend as if these governments, China, Cuba, Venezuela, blah, 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 which, again, these are countries that Bill O'Reilly cites as examples all the time of like communism or socialism or whatever. To pretend like these guys are implementing Marx's vision is ridiculous. Um, anyway, um, the other topic that I wanted to talk about today is my disagreement with with Keynesian economics, or like what's called progressive economics, or like basically social democratic economics, um, because sometimes at certain points in my life I have agreed with Keynesian economics and like welfare statism, and sometimes I haven't. And like I agree, for instance, I agree with certain aspects now. Like I agree with, for instance, Social Security. I think that's a decent policy. Um, I think there are ways in which we could reform the system. And by the way, I don't mean we should cut the system. I think that there are ways we can improve it. I don't think that involves cutting the system, but there are definitely some ways that we could improve it. And I think part of that would be to raise the age of eligibility for senior citizens, because I do think that the minimum age is a little bit too low. But I also think for disabled citizens, I think the process is way too bureaucratic and way too complicated. So I think we should simplify programs like SSI. I think we should simplify it for disabled people. I think we should expand eligibility so we can get more disabled people under the program, and get them some income if they're unable to find employment. So I and of course I agree with things like food stamps. I think that that's a pretty good program. Yes, there's fraud, waste, and abuse in all these programs, and that's a problem. But the answer to the answer to fraud and abuse in these programs is not cutting them. It's changing the process and making it so these programs are more safeguarded against waste, fraud, and abuse. So how exactly we go about doing that, I'm not sure, because frankly, I'm not an expert on safety net programs. But as a general rule, especially in the long term, I am eventually for phasing out these programs, because eventually, like I said, I do want to abolish the status system. Eventually, I do think, for the betterment of everybody, I do think it has to go. And I'm reading, or I've been learning more and more about alternatives, and about alternatives to like funding, kind of like a welfare state ish, like funding the commons, if you will, in a non-state society. Like there's systems like Georgism, where you have basically one giant tax on land, and that basically funds everything that's held in common. And I think that's a pretty good alternative. And so there's all different types of alternatives. There's the ANCOM alternative, where everything is just decommodified and you just pool all the natural resources. Sorry. You just pool all the natural resources, and you decommodify them, and you just divvy them up, and you just take as needed, and then of course there's the problem of what if you run out. Sorry about that. There's the problem of what if you run out, but there's ways I think in which that could be mitigated. Maybe you could trade with another society, or there's like 3D printing and things like that should become more and more prominent in the future. So there's a lot of different ways that you could pool resources, and that you could do things like infrastructure and infrastructure repair, and and you could do building projects just by 3D printing. There's a lot of really, really cool possibilities that you could accomplish with things like 3D printing, or again, just by pulling different resources and cooperating in a decentralized, non-statist way. So there are ways to go about getting these things done, and meeting society's needs in a way that doesn't require super centralized and concentrated power. So those are basically just some thoughts I had to catch up with you guys, and I don't know honestly when my next video will be, but just keep looking out for it, and I will see you guys next time here on the left side of liberty, and maybe I'll go catch up on some sleep or something. I don't know, but anyway, in the meantime, take care, and I will see you guys next time.